One of the cloud native principles is that you decouple the workload from the underlying infrastructure. For the edge, this principle does not apply. It actually breaks. Edge workloads are dependent on the nature of the infrastructure that's running underneath. And that's why you have to think of edge applications and infrastructures as a whole. The next panel is going to explore the world of edge infrastructure. I'd like to introduce the moderator, Sanyogita Shamsunder. Sanyogita is the head of Global Network Edge at Google. Prior to that, she was the VP of Product Strategy and Operations at Verizon, which is when we first met. Sanyogita, please introduce yourself and a panel as well.
Thank you. I came here thinking I'm going to leave my telco past behind. But the past 45 minutes, we've been talking about telcos and what they do for edge. Just a quick introduction. I've been with Google for about a year, and like we decided, we're not going to represent our companies. We're going to be, impartially talk about the industry in general. So that's what I'm here to do. Prior to that, I was at Verizon for 14 years. A big part of my life there was leading all the 5G work at Verizon. So I'm still waiting for the $4 trillion market to emerge for the past 5 years. And I will wait. So as you can see, I have a lot of scars of that. And then I have been, with the semiconductor industry for a bit, and a little bit of optical work. I was with Bell Labs for a little while, so I've been in this industry for a long time. Have seen 4G, 5G, and maybe even 6G. So I'm happy to introduce my esteemed panelists here. Ashish, Yadav. She's from Capgemini. Welcome. Kaladhar, Voruganti from Equinix. Greg Touretsky from Seagate, and Prakash from Cloudbrink. Yep. So before we begin, why don't we go around with quick 30-second introduction of yourselves. Let's start with Prakash.
Thank you, Sanyogita. My name is Prakash Mana, co-founder, CEO of Cloudbrink. Cloudbrink, quick 15 seconds, we're delivering ultra high performance, dark network level of secure in-office-like experience to hybrid remote workforce no matter where they are. As I was walking in, Sanyogita said that she's going to ask something unique or something special, yes. And that has put a ton of stress on me. I'm a pretty boring guy, just so you know. My favorite TV series is Captain Underpants. Wonderful series for any entrepreneur, especially during fundraising times. The level of silliness will make you laugh. As I said, I'm a boring guy. As I was walking out of my house, I asked my son that, hey, I'll be going out, anything special? He said, yeah, there is something special. I'll tell you this joke. So he was helping me out. Instead of saying something special about me, let me share that joke with you. I found it funny. We're about 2 hours late into this joke now. Okay? He asked me, what is the best time to visit a dentist? Any answers? What is a good answer? 2:30. 2:30.
I got it.
We're 2 hours late into the joke. It's 4:30 now, but that's okay.
Okay. My name is Gregory Touretsky. I'm a Senior Director of Product Management at Seagate, working on something that not many people know about Seagate. We launched our own cloud services. So I work on cloud storage and compute offerings. I worked before that in a variety of large and small companies and around infrastructure and storage and compute and other aspects of data center and clouds, which is someone else's data center. From something interesting that you suggested us to talk about, I was thinking about me starting at Intel, something like 25 years ago, when I started my career. And they took me to the data center, and they showed me that with excitement that we just deployed the 3rd terabyte of storage in the data center. And that was like one of the largest Intel design centers in the world. Right? And if I think now about terabyte in my phone, that shows where we are now and where we're going in this area. So.
Thank you, Greg.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kaladhar. I'm a senior technologist at Equinix. Equinix, as you all know, is like the current aggregation point. Most, you name it, all the different networks, clouds, everybody aggregates at Equinix. So we are very active, actually, about the next edge, next aggregation point where it is going to happen. So we have definite interest there. Something interesting about myself, I love to teach robotics to young kids, grade 3 to grade 5 on Saturdays. And one thing I realized is that they have no fear. So when you give them a computer and you ask them to do something, they break the system right away. So like, for example, there's a for loop, they put 1 to 10 million or something like that, right? I never in my programming world try to put 10 million in the for loop, right? So that tells you their mentality, how they think is very different, and I think that's very interesting, yeah.
Ashish, thank you.
Hi, my name is Ashish, and I'm from Capgemini. I am responsible for partnerships and technical product marketing for SFS, which is Software Frameworks and Solutions Group. Pretty product offering in a service company. And one interesting fact about myself, I also teach kids in India. So I'm sponsoring education for many kids in India. And when I'm visiting home, which is twice a year, I actually go and teach underprivileged kids. That's my passion. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So let's continue, I guess, the topic. And the last panel, right, in the last panel, we kind of concluded that the consumer applications are not here, or not here anytime soon, right? And I think we generally agree as a group. The telco world notwithstanding, there are few applications that kind of drive what 5G, some of the 5G features give you, right? Other than bandwidth, perhaps at this point. So let's focus on enterprise then, right? Enterprise seems to be the place where edge is important. We also saw from Roy's presentation and later on that the enterprise may have its own definition of what edge they want, right? Or what edge they prefer. And a lot of it actually comes down to ROI, right? Value. What are you bringing? Why should I put, and I think Sharp referred to it a little bit, and so did Puneet. It doesn't make sense to have a high compute camera on the edge, a smart camera on the edge. Should I just do that? Or should I haul all the video back to maybe a near far edge location and do all the compute there, right? What does the business case look like? And that's a struggle at this point. That's not at all clear that one is better than the other. Where should we be as an industry for that to make sense is not clear. So I don't know if it is 5 years from now or 10 years from now. I guess we'll all collectively as an industry figure that out. And the cost structure is at a point where enterprise can make an easy sense. So Ashish, you deal with enterprises. Tell us what you're seeing from your enterprise customers. What are the what type of infrastructure are they looking for? What are their puts and takes? What is the biggest challenge you're facing?
So I see enterprises more in a demo and testing lukewarm waters kind of state right now.
Mm-hmm.
You will see a lot of, like Roy said, I have to include AI ML, and they also feel the same way.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of marriage between edge and all these AI ML applications. They're looking more for data crunching in these applications using that data on the edge to give them the ROI.
Mm-hmm.
So you see kitchens that'll have sensors that can be managed remotely, or kitchens which have preemptive maintenance. So something that can give them use cases which can reduce their operations cost. That's what we see more towards use cases right now.
Okay, that's great. So then, Kaladhar, you are in an industry that is kind of in the middle, right? You, the prem is not very interesting for you, maybe not. How do you see the industry dynamics from your
Sure.
vantage point?
So with respect to edge, what we are seeing is as you saw in the initial presentation, there's a continuum of edges, right from device, maybe the far edge, micro edge, metro edge, we call ourselves Equinix, and then the cloud availability zone. And what we're seeing is interesting phenomena is that I call it cloud out and edge in. Cloud out, what we're seeing is that the AI training, for example, is moving from the centralized cloud to at least metro level. Because these AI machines need a lot of power. Like we are seeing north of 30 kilowatts per rack easily nowadays. And people are asking for liquid cooling. But the cloud out phenomena is basically, I'll give you a very concrete example. So we worked with some airlines, and they're generating about 4 terabytes of data per plane per day. And now they don't want to move that data to a central location in Europe to do the training. So instead what they're doing is they're using federated orchestrators, and they're trying to do the training at the metro level where the data is getting generated. So that I call it as cloud out. But we're also seeing what we call as edge in. What an edge in is that for AI inference especially, what we're finding is that you don't need to have an AI stack in every one of your stores or every one of your gas stations, etc. You can move up in the edge hierarchy and go to like a metro level and get better CapEx and OpEx. And depending on the latency of your application, some, as they mentioned, real time, really, somebody is going to jump over the fence or something, you might have to do it at the far edge. Otherwise, for many other workloads we are finding, you can actually comfortably do it 10 milliseconds round trip in a metro edge. That works just fine. You get better CapEx, you get better OpEx, more flexibility in your AI pipeline because you can add new use cases, new AI models, no issues, right? And also privacy. Many times the security of the far edge is not real. Physical security is an issue. So you can actually do that at metro level edge and cloud. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that the infrastructure today can support applications that are, let's say, 10 milliseconds type of latency use cases.
Yes, in most metros.
In
yeah,
most metros.
80% of our US population, we are seeing that. Yeah, we have reached there. Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. That's a benchmark that many times the industry uses, right? 10 milliseconds because the air interface gets better and better from a wireless perspective, but
this is the physical
yes,
yeah.
the physical transfer.
Yeah, because you have hairpin effects with different network providers.
That's right.
That adds latency.
That's right. Let's get there. Let's get to that a little later.
Yeah.
When you talk about multiple operators, multiple telcos, and multiple enterprises, and multiple clouds, application supporting all of that infrastructure and working across that infrastructure has another set of challenges. So let's table that for a second. Greg, you are looking at this from the storage vantage viewpoint. How are you seeing this industry differently, or the challenges differently?
Yeah, it's actually bringing quite a lot of new points of view on storage and data processing. Right, something that was mentioned about data privacy and data collection. Your autonomous car collects a terabyte of data a day. It knows exactly where you've been during this day and knows where you go and how much time you spend in different places. You bring this car to a service center or to a garage. Do you want the service person in this garage to get this information about you? How do you protect this, right? How do you set access controls, and how can you process this data within the car and make sure that only people, applications or people who can access the data can really access it and not somebody else? How can you transfer this data from those far edge stations, vehicles, seismic stations that we have and so on, into the edge and maybe into the metro data center, into the cloud? How do you ensure that the data that was transferred between different stations is staying intact? And you can generate some kind of fingerprints of the data and make sure that it's the same, not modified. Right. So all those challenges are very new and growing in this area of the edge storage and edge data acquisition and transfer and processing.
Yeah. That brings me to thank you. That brings me to Cloudbrink. You kind of play in all of this, right? As an infrastructure provider. How did you see this journey evolve the past 3 to 5 years since you've been out there, I guess?
Yeah, thank you. You see, our perspective has been slightly different. Experience has been very different. my past experience was I've held chief product officer, other roles in infrastructure security industries before. So when I went back to the same group of CIOs or infrastructure leaders or CISOs and stuff, the moment I would bring the word edge, if it's in a casual setting, people will say timeout. We have barely understood how to spell cloud. Now don't throw this new curveball at us. Right? So if we take this term out, and if you look at some of the stats that you talked about, right? Today, 84% of enterprise workforce lives no more than 7 to 20 milliseconds away from a closest compute, whether we call it edge, whether we call it cloud. It could be the Google Cloud, it could be the AWS Verizon 5G wavelength compute, whatever it is, right? When we start looking at those kind of stats, we play in future of work. I was recently in a future of work summit. And in that, the CIO group concluded that the single most profound shift that enterprise is facing right now is to how to get best out of our people when they are working anywhere they want to work from. And technology should make it all possible. So I think when you start looking at it from a use case perspective, the idea is how do we deliver the level of experience that people want, that intimate experience. In this particular case, hey, when I'm inside the office, I'm able to access all applications securely, all of that. How should I be able to do that when I'm working from home? Similarly, when you talk to I was talking to a pharmaceutical company. They are moving into telehealth. So their whole point is that how do we make sure when a patient and a provider is hopping on a call that both parties feel like they're sitting in the room, there is a real-time experience, all of those things. I think it's when we start looking at it from a use case point of view, bringing applications so intimate to end user that you feel like you are engaging with the application in real time makes all the difference.
I think this goes back to the discussion that we were having in the previous panel, right? One of the driving use cases, going back to the consumer, maybe this spans consumer as well as or B2B2C type of a use case, is the immersive communication, right? But the extreme of it is probably VR, metaverse, but even a 2D. How can I make it better, right? And that requires some additional processing, additional intelligence, and perhaps at the edge or perhaps not, because I mean, if you strictly look at the latency requirements for something like a video communication or speech, I mean, it's not that it's not that stringent, right? I would say it's for a call it was like 100 or 200 milliseconds and we were still fine. But some of these applications will require better. But is 10 milliseconds good enough? 20 milliseconds good enough? Or do I need to go much lower than that, right? So I think that's the point. Going back to the things that you're seeing, Ashish, yes, they are mostly proof of concepts. A lot of stuff today on edge is proof of concept. But if you go to the next step, let's say 2, 3, 4 years from now, some of these things start getting real. What do you see as some of the challenges of managing this infrastructure? I think he touched upon it a little bit, and Prakash also touched upon it a little bit. Like, how do you make these applications work across multiple domains, right? What do you think?
I see two things here. One, with the edge coming closer to the user in businesses, it has moved away from protection of the data centers. So security is a challenge that I think everybody is trying to pick up on, and we are seeing solutions where you have something like EOS and all those kind of things that are coming up which have controls on the cloud and not on the edges. That's certainly something that's evolving, and we'll see more challenges as we go and deploy. And the second part is how do we touched it in the last panel as well, that how do we make all these interfaces even? Right now, from edge to edge, you have certain forums that are doing the communications. So you have northbound, southbound, so many interfaces and so many different forums that are trying to channelize it. So how do we ensure that communication is flowing between applications and developers see that as a seamless communication platform. So that's another challenge that I see will.
So do you
will
see an
face.
opportunity there?
Absolutely. I think somebody will emerge as an next ORAN for Edge, and that's definitely an opportunity. You are it.
Kaladhar, you are in the unique space of working with the telco providers, the cloud providers, providing that critical infrastructure connectivity to all of them. When you talk about applications that can work across multiple telco providers, operators, especially connecting to a edge. Let's say we get to a point where there is a single edge that can serve multiple operators. I don't know when that's going to happen. Maybe that's when we need to have a cloud provider that can also work with all of them, and well with each other as well. So I think there are multiple layers of. Let's just say, how do we get there? What are the opportunities you see in the meantime?
Yeah. So currently, definitely the aggregation point for networks and clouds, it's happening at Equinix
Right.
pretty well globally. But now the whole question is now it's all about data. How much data aggregation is required for these next generation applications at the far edge? And I think because you will have, as you correctly said, there will be MECs that will be managed by different quote-unquote NSPs or CSPs. I think there will be some battle about who will monetize that. That's a separate question. But I definitely see that for new use cases that require data aggregation, right, you will need more of a neutral type of location that is closer. Because bilateral agreements between CSPs and NSPs will not cut it, in my opinion. Because so that is the first thing. You will need some kind of neutral aggregation point. And secondly, I think you will need people like Aarna Networks, etc., to orchestrate between these different MECs in a seamless way. And either it's through standards, because I don't think that the single CSP or cloud providers or NSP, their APIs will do the job. So I think both you need a need for a neutral aggregation location, as well as orchestrators that will be standards based that can kind of unify all of these.
Yeah, this goes back to how the cellular industry, wireless industry evolved, right? So there's the neutral host in things like stadiums and indoor DAS systems that kind of provides that neutral host, but everybody has still their own boxes in there in the telco closet. And then on the tower side, there's American Tower, which is a common infrastructure for all the different service providers to hang their antennas on, right? Will that continue to go down or go up the stack, however you want to look at it, where you start providing common infrastructure for multiple different cloud providers, and then the next step would be the data that you aggregate and orchestrate across the different providers. So there's a lot of things to unpack there.
Yeah, definitely. I think data sharing, a lot of increasingly people want data from other folks to improve the accuracy of their algorithms, but the providers don't want to give you the data.
Yeah.
So they want federated systems, federated AI or learning systems where you bring the compute to data instead of taking your data to some compute. Otherwise, privacy will be compromised.
Yeah. Okay.